Okay. I think we are going to get started. Welcome everybody to this next edition of our Digital Cafe. Hope everyone's doing well today. We know things are changing rapidly and it's concerning. There's a lot of information out there. And you're staying safe, you're staying home, you're staying healthy. We're going to pivot a little bit today. We will take COVID-19 related questions or anything on your mind. But I wanted to start today because we have our special guest with really talking, and I have a feeling this is going to take a lot of the hour because there's been a lot of interest. Really talk about election security and what is happening with our democracy in this time where things are unsafe to go to the polls. We know that, our presidential primary preference election made some headlines about this. But as we look forward to August primaries, as we look forward to November, there is a concern at the federal level. There's a lot of information we're going to share with you about that tonight. And there's, of course, movement and action being taken at the state level. So let's start off. I'm going to introduce Adrian Fontes. Adrian, hello. Our county recorder is here with us.
Hello, Anita. How are you doing this late afternoon?
Doing well this evening. So we will get started. Everybody knows we're here. We're going to say hi to everybody that's watching live on Facebook. If you're watching live on Facebook, you can ask questions in the comments, and our team is getting those comments into the Zoom so we can answer those questions live for you. So if you want to put a hashtag live in the comments right now if you're watching on Facebook. If you're here in the Zoom, you can see us and hear us. Hopefully, please put a 1 in the comments to make sure that everyone can hear right now before we really get going. I want to make sure that everyone is connected okay. If you are in the Zoom with us, and I can see a lot of 1s coming in, if you're in the Zoom with us and you want to ask a question, you can use the question and answer on your screen. There's a little Q&A thing at the bottom of the screen for everybody. Put your question in there. We'll turn your audio on. We'll even add you to video if some of you are comfortable with that. I know some people don't love that, but we'd love to engage with you that way. So please ask your questions in Q&A as we go. Also, you can just use the chat that you are working in right now if that's more comfortable to you. And we'll try to get to everyone as we go on. So I want to start with, and I don't know if you saw this, Adrian, but it was an opinion, I'm sure you did. This is your stuff. So this was an opinion piece by our one of our lovely state representatives in LD20, Republican, that was in the Arizona Republic today. And it was about how essentially that this creating an all-mail system is going to bring challenges to our elections and challenge the integrity of our elections. How do you respond to that?
Well, I kind of responded to Representative Bullock on Twitter, and I told her, in 2018, 80%, I just did it a little while ago. I think my chief of staff's not going to be too happy about that. But I was like, how did you get elected, Representative Bullock? Because in 2018, 80% of our turnout was ballot by mail, early votes, 80%, 80. And in 2019, in November, we mailed out 1.8 million ballots for school bonds and overrides, fire districts, water districts. We just had municipal elections in Tempe and in Chandler that were 100% ballot by mail. Arizona's been running ballot by mail elections or vote at home elections for years, for a very long time. And I think it's a very convenient argument to make now. And it's kind of a hard one for them to make, because if you look at the history of elections in Arizona, this is what the voters want, right? What is an election? An election is the voters get the choices that they want. In Arizona, we're lucky. We have a permanent early vote list, which is a no excuse absentee ballot system by which the voter signs up once and then gets sent a ballot every time they're eligible for an election. And that's fantastic. And when it started back in around 2007, 2008, right before it started, 50% of our voters were sending a postcard back and forth to their county recorders to get an absentee ballot for every single election, 50%. We're up to more than 74% of all of our voters are now on the permanent early vote list. That means they just get their ballot. And that 74% accounts for 80 to 85% of overall turnout. So what we know is this: if you want more people to vote, do ballot by mail or vote at home, whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't kill any of the other options. All the other options are always available. But to our good friends who don't like this for whatever reason, what I really want to know is what's the actual real fact-based concern that you have, particularly given the fact that, again, in 2018, when a lot of these folks got elected, in fact, every senator and every representative in the state house and Senate got elected, 80% of that turnout was ballot by mail. And so it's really rough when someone gets elected by a system and then tries to disparage the system at the same time. That's
right. And so, yeah, and so, Pebble, you talked about that. That's obviously a choice. And one of the arguments in the opinion piece was that voters, and I had to chuckle at this, but that voters should preserve their choice. If they want to go to the polling location, if they want to vote by mail, they have the option, right? You're right. We all have the option to go sign up for Pebble. To me, that's the argument in times like this. That's kind of like saying everybody likes their insurance and they want that choice, right, for healthcare. I won't go there, but but it's an idea. Yes, it's your choice of how you vote, but these are really extraordinary times.
Well, so let me take a step back from what you're going with right now, because I think this is incredibly important, and a lot of people don't look at it this way. When I look at any constitutional right, I look at it through the lens of the right belongs to the citizen. It is your individual right as a citizen to vote. In order to allow, see, this is the thing, the language allow means that I'm giving it to you. That's not how it is. It's already owned by the citizen, okay? Mm-hmm. There's a logical argument to be made that every citizen on birth, once you've completed your 18th trip around the sun, you should automatically be able to vote. And there's
registration.
No barriers to that, including, some would argue, voter registration. Because we already know who you are, right? We've got access right now to enough databases to make our voter rolls even better, even more accurate, even cleaner than they already are. But we don't have a system of authentic voter registration. Some people call it automatic voter registration. I think that's a misnomer. I think it's authentic voter registration because you can verify that this person has this fundamental right, and then you just give them their ballot the most effective way you can. Choices mean you actually do have those choices. Mm-hmm. Arizonans who are on the permanent early vote list have the choice of using that ballot or going on election day. But if you're not on that list, you don't have that choice.
Right.
You see, it's an interesting twist to say, well, you can sign up. It's your choice not to sign up. Well, but wait a minute. We know that we've got hundreds of thousands of new people just right here in Maricopa County who come from all over the place. And the important thing is this, a lot of the concerns are about, they say voter fraud and voter security and all this stuff, but when you actually look at an all ballot by mail election, what you have is 100% ballot accountability, which gets into some of the security questions. You don't have that in a regular polling place election day election. I can get more into that if you want, but at the end of the day, choice would be give everybody their ballot in the mail and let them pick if they want to use that one or if they want to come in on election day. That's real choice, if that's the argument.
And do you think, and we have a lot of questions already coming in, but I had this thought, do you think that in these extenuating circumstances, the idea that we have to, and we all know, I mean, I don't know if we all know, everyone that's watching, but I know that you tried to do kind of an all-mail quick turnaround for the presidential preference, and we can talk about that a little bit. But in these extenuating circumstances, when people are barraged with so much information, there's so much fear, every day is changing, to expect them to say, oh yes, let me also request to be on Pebble, if they're not already on it. I mean, that's how I look at this. I look at this as that we're asking people, instead of just going to all mail, we're asking people to take that extra step in a time where this is not what people should be thinking about. They should just have their right to vote, mail, and then drop it off or turn it in, or however we do it.
Yeah, in this COVID-19 global pandemic doesn't have anything to do with voter choice, in my mind.
Right.
The hard push towards ballot by mail and what I was working on or trying to do didn't have anything to do with choice. It had to do with life and death. It had to do with safety. It had to do with hundreds, thousands of poll workers, tens of thousands of voters, and getting into close proximity when it is not absolutely necessary. Everyone, everywhere, across the board, I mean, even the governor of Georgia figured it out recently, is a vector for the transmission of this virus. All of us.
Right.
And it's merely because we are but flesh and bone. We're human beings. And so we are all dangerous to one another. And that's why social distancing is important. Washing your hands is important. Not smooching everybody you see is important. All of that stuff, right? Okay. And so when you have a circumstance where you don't have to put people in the same room, face to face, touching the same implements like pens and things of this nature, breathing the same air in close proximity. When you don't have to do that, then don't do it. Okay? Now, we're not New York or Wisconsin or any other state that doesn't already have a very healthy, very robust ballot by mail system. They don't have it. We do. We can essentially flip a switch and make everybody keep the ultimate social distance on election day and not force people into tight places, force people into these circumstances where they have to choose between the fundamental right of voting and possible death. Who needs to make that choice?
No.
And it's arguments against it for the, and let me be very, very clear about something. I do not expect that the push for all ballot by mail is going to last beyond the fall of 2020. If we end up with a vaccine for this virus, God willing tomorrow, which we won't, but if we did, then this argument goes away, right? Because this is the policy now, this is the state of the law. But this is an emergency. You know, I'm not looking to go beyond the general election for all ballot by mail. Would I prefer that? Sure. But right now, I'd like to see August and November, and then when they get back into session, they can have their regular debate, their regular deliberation during the regular session, let the legislative process move forward, and off you go. But we don't have time for that right now. We just don't have time for that. And there's plenty of people out there who are really, really sick. You know, I hate to think that they got sick or they got exposed at a polling place during the PPD. I hate to think that that's true.
Right. And we won't know, right? And so to take the risk is unnecessary. I mean, what you touched on is 33 states have some form of mail elections at this point, some form. Arizona has been way ahead of this. We're not at Oregon level yet where everything is mail, but we are prepared to make that switch. You know, there's arguments across, you know, federally, when we look at this, there's arguments that different states aren't ready, that certain states that tried to pivot for their PPE, different things, they ran out of envelopes, they had to have emergency supplies ordered, you know, things like that, that I don't think we would run into. Perhaps in some of our tribal nations, there are concerns. So I know Secretary Hobbs this is something she is pushing as well, and really leading the charge on. Our state ledge decided to recess without voting on it. So what do you think are the chances of this happening? And then we'll get to some of these questions, but that's been the number one question we got over email today was, is it going to happen, do you think, for Arizona? And then we'll talk federally.
Well, I hope so. And I'm not really that great of a political prognosticator, right? I do elections, not politics. They're very, very different creatures. Look, what it comes down to is, and you know, I mentioned earlier in my little Twitter exchange with Representative Bullock, it's meant in the spirit that it's meant in, right? We need to have actual data-driven, factual conversations about not just the process, not just how does it work, but the time that we're in and the real context of what's going on. You know, I was just on the Johns Hopkins University data site. We're over 1 million. We're 1,013,000 globally today. The deaths are stacking up. This is not just a flu. This is going to be, God forbid, it's going to be the biggest killer of people on a day-to-day basis in the United States in the next week and a half. And we hope it doesn't happen. But it's a different time, right? And the idea of always being all ballot by mail is not what anybody is really advocating for. I'm not advocating for that in this instance. Normally I would be, but in this instance, I'm like, no, that's a bigger policy question for a long term. Right now, for August 4th, we need this. What are the chances? I hope better than even. And here's why I hope better than even. I mean, well, the why is obvious, but there's also a possibility, and we don't know exactly for sure, but there's also a possibility that the governor under the executive order can mandate this. Now, there's additionally a remote possibility, and I'm an attorney, but there's some parts of the law that I'm not really great in, and one of them is emergency declarations. There is a very remote possibility, although I don't know that it's there, that county boards of supervisors can actually make that call on their own. Now, I don't know what they have to do first, if there's a first step, second step process. It would be a lot better if we could just jump in and say, we're just going to do it for August and November, and that's it. And the controversy goes away and everything is done. And we get what we need for our health and safety. I'm hoping reasonable minds can come to the fore and actually make this happen. And by the way, I don't know any election administrators in the state who oppose it. I don't know any county recorders who oppose it. I don't know any election directors in any of the counties who oppose it. I think everybody at this stage of the game who's on the actual administration side of things, right? I mean, the secretary, the regulators, the policymakers, all those guys, but the folks who actually do it, we're finding significant fear among our poll workers. We're seeing that all over the country. We're finding our locations where we don't own any of the polling places. We've got to go out and find them. We're having some challenges there. The plans that we're looking at, if we do have to do it on the ground, they're pretty complex and they're pretty different. It doesn't matter what we do. It's going to look very, very different in August and November than we'd all like it to. So if we make an adjustment, I think we should make an adjustment into something that we already do very well, because we want best in class elections, and serving the public that way is really the motivator. Right.
And administrators, poll workers, 2/3 of Americans do not feel safe. That's the recent Pew Research study. 2/3 of Americans say they don't want to go vote in a polling location. I don't know why the other 1/3 feels okay about it, but that's also people that still think this isn't real, right? But this is something we have to focus on. I'm going to move to some questions here, and we're going to try this. We're going to answer live Nancy. So this is from Nancy. I don't know if you can see these, Adrian, or not, but can you explain the steps on how a registered voter can actually go to the site and switch to Pebble to vote by mail? She was having trouble doing that, so.
Is that on servicearizona.com or?
She was saying on your site. So tell her where to go. I mean, Service Arizona has it.
Right. So there's 2 ways to get an early ballot. Well, 3 ways. We won't do the 3rd one. I'll just leave that off for the sake of simplicity. The first way to get an early ballot is for every single election, and that's to get on the permanent early vote list. So when you first sign up to vote, if you're using a paper form, you check the box on top. If you're at motor vehicle division and you're getting a driver's license, updating your address, etc., make sure that they put that in there because they're the ones that do the data entry there at the counter. So there's that. If you're going to servicearizona.com, there's an opt-in box that you have to opt in. Yes, I want to get my, okay, so that's the first way, right? When you register to vote, whether you're changing your name, changing your address, etc. There's another way to do it, but it's only available for the immediate next election. That's administered by the Maricopa County Recorder's Office for Maricopa County voters. And right now, the next election is a municipal election. It's an all ballot by mail election for Fountain Hills. And that election, a surprise, right? Nobody's talking about that one being unfair.
Right.
For the proximate election, which means whatever election is next, this one's in May, any voter can sign up to get that election's ballot early, but you can only sign up for the next election. And the law is very specific. It gives me the opportunity as the county recorder, and now that's on the official side. I'm not here in my official capacity. I'm not endorsing anybody, blah, 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 all that good qualifier stuff. On the website, well, the statute says 93 days before the election and up until, I think it's 11 days, from 93 to 11 days before the election, you can actually go onto the Maricopa County Recorder's Office and order a ballot early for just that election. It doesn't put you on the permanent early vote list because that needs the signature. But you can go online and you can get an early ballot. You cannot do it, however, until 93 days before that next election. So for the August 4th election, you're talking about, let's see, July, June, May, sometime in early May. All right. And there's that little gap of time in there because we're still going to be before the Fountain Hills election, but then we'll be inside those 93 days. So it's a little bit confusing at that point. So it's possible to sign up for an early ballot on my website, on the office's website, maricopa.vote, but it's only for the next immediate election. You do not end up on the permanent early vote list. So those are the two things. You can get on the PVL, normal, either servicearizona.com, voter registration, MVD, all that stuff, or you can sign up for the one next election to get an early ballot in the mail. So I know that a lot of folks are talking about that. Campaigns are looking at it. Other folks are thinking about it, and they should be. We as the office are not anticipating pushing any messages on that out until after we've hit that 93-day marker, for the sake of not confusing folks, because we don't want to get the two things jumbled up. And in our system, we haven't even opened the election yet until we get past that day. So there's a bunch of technical stuff on the backside. I don't know how they're specifically administered in some of the other counties in Arizona, so I couldn't answer that part. But I hope, Nancy, that takes care of that question for you. I hope.
So I have to just say, because you said PVL and we all say Pebble. What is it? now you got me, Adrian.
Anita, this is America.
I
You know what you want.
I want. I have the choice, freedom. I love it. Okay, we're going to try to see if Aaron. So there's a couple of questions that are similar, which is how do we put pressure on? And I'm going to see if Aaron, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You want to ask your question? Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Hi. Oh, and I heard that it's Pebble in one part of the state and PVL down in Tucson or something.
Oh, really?
So.
Okay. All right.
I've heard that too. I've actually heard that from my own staff. And when they say that, I tell them, I'm originally from Santa Cruz County, which is also south of the Gila River.
South side.
It's like Prescott kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, okay, so my question is, so to support or get support for going to an all mail-in ballot for sending out for everybody to be able to mail in for the August and November elections this year. You mentioned the County Board of Supervisors, so that's helpful. I can call mine. Is there any, or who else it might be instrumental in either supporting or trying to block this decision?
Aaron, what LD do you live in, Aaron?
So I'm in, I'm 28.
You're in 28? So you got a pretty reasonable crowd there representing you down on 17th Avenue. I mean, call your representatives. I think
Okay.
you got Kate
Brophy McGee, yeah.
in the Senate, and then you've got Aaron and Kelly Butler, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So they're not unreasonable people. Give them a call. Give them the support that they need. I don't know where any of them are. I would imagine a couple of them are on the side of putting it out there. But look, at the end of the day, it comes down to, it's the same thing you hear people saying all the time. This is a representative democracy. And in a representative democracy, we go to our representatives and we pressure them to do what we want them to do. So call and write the governor, because the governor is he's not a monarch. He represents us too. He is an executive officer like me. He has a lot more departments. I just have a narrow space, but we play a similar type of role. And, you know, give the secretary the support that she needs. Call her office and say, yes, I support this. Thank you. Call, you know, like you said, your supervisor. I think you're in District 2 or 3.
3. I'm Bill Gates.
You're in 3. So Bill Gates, who I'm very fond of Bill Gates. He and I worked together to reorganize the entire department. He's a good guy and a Republican at the same time, which is kind of cool. And it was great. Give him a call. Give him the support that he needs, and tell him you're a Democrat. You know, this is how our democracy is supposed to work. And even in the worst times, we've got to depend on the system that we believe in, or we don't really have a system that we believe in, right? So, yeah. Aaron, do those things that you already know that you need to do. And unlike voting, do it early and do it often. But like voting, do it early. So just start making those calls, make those emails.
Right, and definitely we have another question similar was, yes, should we write the governor? And yes, he can take executive action. He can do something about this. So now, again, contact.
I think he can use executive action. I don't know if the Attorney General, who he and I, we don't get along.
That's true.
I don't agree with that, but look, Brnovich is doing what he thinks is the right thing to do, whether you like his decisions or not, right? And he went to the court. I respect the court's decision, but I'm an independently elected constitutional officer just like he is. And I'll lean on the courts when necessary. So, you know, there's some important precepts that are sitting on top of this thing. And that is that, again, this is a representative democracy. And when folks get elected to do a certain job, there may be disagreements. And the proper and appropriate place to do those disagreements is not in nasty letters. It is, you want to go to the court, not me, knock your socks off, because writing me a nasty letter ain't going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, thank you. If you have follow-ups, you can put them in the question and answer. Anyone else that has a question that they are burning to ask, please do. If you're on Facebook, again, you can put the questions in the comments if you're watching live on Facebook, and we'll get them in here. We are going to go to Ron, and we're going to see if we can get you in here. Let me find you so you can ask your question. Oh, look at that photo. All right, can you, yep, there you go.
Hey, Adrian, hey, thank you for all you're doing. I feel like we live in a state that's so far ahead of the rest of the country, and I really appreciate you taking a vocal stance of really fighting for everybody's right to vote.
You know, Ron, before you ask your question, let me say this. You hit on something right now that I think is incredibly important. We are so far ahead of most states when it comes to voting and voting rights. And Arizona gets a bad rap because every once in a while, some nonsense pops out of the legislature, and we have this reputation for being crazy. And so it gets magnified and amplified just because of Arizona's reputation. But Ron is absolutely right. We should be proud of the system that we have in Arizona. It's really, really good. And while some people try to, chip away at it, it works really well. So sorry about that, Ron. I just wanted to give a little pro-Arizona shout out because we're really down on ourselves sometimes. It's just not fair. We deserve to be cheerleading ourselves when it's appropriate and when it's due. And we have a good system. So go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we can all be really proud of what you're doing. I'm so impressed with it. And my question was, do you see as part of your role of helping to register more voters, particularly in underrepresented areas, or is it just to, make sure registered voters have the opportunity to vote?
So that's a great question, Ron. And there are two schools of thought on this particular issue in the world of election administration. Number one school of thought is sort of a more traditional school, and that is, if you want it, I got it, you got to come and get it, right? And it's a very sit back and just let the world do its own thing sort of a role. The other view among elections administrators all over the country, and there are two very well-established points of view. The second one is the one I subscribe to, and that is, I'm not just a person who sits and waits for you to come to me, particularly when I have communities who are traditionally underserved. Those traditionally underserved communities have to be served, and all of the rest of society still has to be educated and advocated for. So there's two pieces to this puzzle from my perspective. So I fall under that second school. Number one, we've really increased outreach generally to the general public. We launched the Be Ballot Ready campaign with Fill the Ballot, as you recall, for the PPE. You're gonna see a lot more of Phil during the summer before the primary election and then into the fall for the general. He's a great character. He brings attention to the idea of, am I registered, with whom, where, how do I vote, where do I vote, et cetera. So he's a good ambassador for the brand of voting generally. The second part is, you know, and you touched on in your question is really important. Are we reaching out to traditionally underserved communities? And the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, the Elections Assistance Commission, which is an independent body of the government that was created by the Help America Vote Act back in the early 2000s, grants an award every year, the Clearinghouse Awards. There's 6 that they give this last year. There were 1,000 applications for this award. It is a competitive award. And the Maricopa County Recorder's Office won that award. And 2 of the commissioners came down from Washington, D.C. to Phoenix to present that award to myself and my community relations team for a project that we called the Roundtable Project. And in that project, what we did was we went out to various communities of underserved voters. We went out to the Latino community, the African American community, the Asian American Pacific Islander community, to the Native American community, to college and university students, and to voters with disabilities. So these 6 groups of folks were traditionally underserved. We went out and we went to them. We got groups within those communities to host us and invite other groups from within those communities into each roundtable. So the Latino roundtable had a whole diaspora of groups from all over the African American community. One was hosted at an AME church. One of them was hosted at, different places. We were hosted by the Gila River Indian community out on their tribal land to talk to a bunch of groups of Native American voters. In any event, each of these times that we met with them, we would ask them, what are some of the barriers that you have? What can our office do to reduce those barriers or eliminate those barriers? How is it that we can better communicate with you and your voters? And it was so effective, as a matter of fact, that in meeting with the community of voters with disabilities, we actually drafted, in conjunction with our office, our lawyers at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, and the ACDL, the Arizona Committee for Disability Law, I think it is. Anyway, we created a policy internally to assist voters with disabilities in actually filling out their ballot by mail ballots and give them some rules that are applicable for our office. And that's a real life policy change for voters with disabilities that has real life impact that came from the Roundtable Project. And we're really excited about continuing on with this communication with all of these communities. So yeah, we're pushing the envelope, and I'm really pleased with the results.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. And great work. I'm gonna make sure I'm trying to manage this. So let's see. Lots of questions for you, Adrian. So thank you again for doing this and taking the time.
I like that.
I think
you, Anita. That's kind of cool.
You like what?
I like that bass behind you.
Oh, so yeah, that's a guitar, isn't it?
Is it a
It's
guitar?
not a bass.
There you go.
I don't really know anything. No, we're still going.
Oh.
This is my husband.
Hello.
I pretend. I was.
Two strings or 6
There,
strings?
there's everybody on Facebook. You can see him.
Hello.
There's like a light in my face the entire time. Oh, there we go. My eyes feel so much better. Sorry if I was glowing. There we go.
Hey, Adrian.
Hey.
So we're gonna keep going with some questions. Thank you. Let's see. I want to pull up. I'm going to address this because we had new questions come in specifically again about what can Doug Ducey do. From what we know, he should be able to do something with an executive order. We do recommend that you write him, call his office, continue to push this issue. He himself was, I think, doing some type of town hall today. Maybe he'll start to push on this one a little harder. But again, I feel like we've noticed so far in everything that's happened with this crisis is that we continue to raise our voices, we're seeing the action. It's not as soon as we'd like, but if we continue to raise our voices, we'll see that. And I do have to say, you know, Adrian is correct. Arizona is far ahead in this already to switch over we're not somebody that's never had mail, right? So to switch over to do this isn't going to be such a pain, but we still need to move quickly. We should do this early so that there's time for all our administrators to prepare. But we also need to, and I can say this, he can't, look at the ones that are trying to suppress the vote. And like we talked about at the beginning of this, our representative in LD20, why? What's her reason? It's hard to know. We also see Michelle Ugenti. I'm going to give a plug to LD23, continuing on a national level to give out this messaging that this isn't something we want to do. So if you want to bring change to those LDs, we have 2 great candidates running. Make sure you check them out. LD23, shout out to you guys, Seth Blattman, and also LD20, we have Judy Schreiber. So I have to say that because it is very important that what we do have in Arizona, the progress that Adrian has made, does not backslide. It is very, very important that we have the right people down at the state legislature, down at the state capitol to protect these rights. So let's move on to another question. And let's see. There's so many, and I'm not trying to leave anybody out. Sandra, it looks like your question. I'm going to see if you want to come on here and ask. And it looks like you're saying you want to, as a PC, if you can, I don't know if you can speak. Oh, I didn't mean to give you more power, Ron. You can speak.
Did it work?
If you want.
You're on.
There you go, Sandra. There you are.
Oh, okay. So
Go
as a
ahead.
PC, I started calling and texting to ask people to switch to to Pebble. And so it seems like that should be a push on, see, I forgot my question already because I wrote it down. Should go to serviceaz.com to do that, because then it'll be permanent. And then they just have a choice.
Right. When you update your voter registration on servicearizona.com, obviously you can sign up there to get onto the permanent early vote list, and that does make it official. They push that down to our office. Interesting side note, servicearizona.com is actually administered by MVD and the Department of Administration. It pushes data into what's now called the AVID system, which is a voter registration system that's owned and operated by the county recorders in 13 counties, 13 of our 15, but it's administered by the Secretary of State's office under their joint agreement. And our model is 13, 1, and 1, so 13 and 2, you will. Pima County and Maricopa County, we have our own separate voter registration system that talks to AVID, but our data is completely separate. So recently, when they had that weird thing with protected addresses going out and all that weird stuff that happened, it didn't have any impact on Maricopa County or Pima County voters because we have separate and distinct databases that will communicate. So if you go to servicearizona.com, the Department of Administration sends the data to AVID. AVID will then shoot it over to us. We administer your data as a Maricopa County voter.
Okay. But that's the way to go, because you said there were 3 options, but it sounds like that's the best option. Okay.
That's a great option. That's a great option. And yeah, that's probably one of the best options.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. So how is everybody feeling out there on Facebook?
Anita, let me jump in really quickly. Sorry, just a quick point. I'm sorry, Anita, quick point of clarification.
Thank you.
ServiceArizona.com has a security feature on it, and it prevents the same IP address from updating voter registration more than X number of times. We don't know exactly what that is, but it's a security thing. So if you go with your phone and you try to update your voter registration at servicearizona.com, that's fine, it'll work and that's good. But you can't basically like take your laptop around and try to get a whole bunch of different people using your laptop, because that same IP address they'll switch it off. Then that's a security feature. It's not a terrible thing, but that's always been one of the reasons why advocacy groups and voter registration advocates have not been able to do massive sort of online stuff. But if you're calling, like I think you said, Sandra, if you're calling people and saying, hey, get online, I'll talk you through it. If you've got those steps and you can talk the voters through that, that's just fine. They have to agree to it, obviously, but yeah, sorry.
No, you're great. This is really helpful information for everybody. I just want to take a pulse of everybody that's here in the Zoom or watching on Facebook Live. Just kind of let us know 1 to 10 how you're liking this chat. And if you have more questions, kind of put those in the comments for us, so we know that you are still all with us. And we're going to go to a question here. Oh, thanks, Karen. Karen gave us a 10 with a smiley face, not just a 10. So this is really helpful. We're getting lots of 10s, lots of loves and 10s. So Steve, I'm going to see if we can get you on here. It looks like, Steve, unfortunately, you have a different version of Zoom, so I cannot have you speak, but I'm going to ask your question for you. So Steve, and this is a question that I know you can answer quickly. He is saying he doesn't get a receipt when he votes showing that his vote was tallied. So he needs to sign up for that, correct?
Yeah, we have a system that we created where you can track your ballot, and we'll send you a message via text or email when we prepare your ballot or when we send it to the printer to be printed, we mail it to you, when we receive it from you, when it gets signature verified, and then when it gets sent for tabulation. You can either text the word JOIN, J-O-I-N, to the number 628-683, or you can go visit Fill the Ballot at beballotready.vote. That's B-E, ballot ready, spell the whole thing out, beballotready.vote. And at that website, you can sign up. I think it's the third tab over on the right side of the screen. And that service is free, text or email. Yeah.
I'm going to put that in the chat here. It's text join to, what was the number again, Adrian?
The number is 628-683.
2860. Too fast for me.
Okay.
628.
628-683.
683, got it. All right, so we're putting that in the chat for everybody here in the Zoom. One of my friends can put that in Facebook as well, and we, can always provide that for you. It is very helpful and it's very efficient. I get the text and the email, so I get all my bases covered and know when my ballot has been received and processed. We're going to talk.
beballotready.vote, and you can visit Phil. I don't know if I can get that to work. No, I'm not going to. But anyway, you can visit Fill the Ballot. It's beballotready.vote. I'll put that in the chat here for you.
Can you put that in there? Great. So while he's putting that in there, we are going to take a look at what has been done federally so far. So at the stimulus package that was passed last week, we know what's coming in. There's been a lot of confusion. If you have questions on that, you can always hit our team up later about what's coming to families, what's being done for small businesses. Part of the package was also $400 million in election security and election protection. And really that's a grant. And so I think we have a slide that we'll pull up, but essentially it's grants to move toward to more mail, not all mail. It's not enough money to move towards all mail. Democrats had tried to get about $4 billion into the bill. Experts think $2 billion is what we need to go countrywide to an all-mail system, and that's been broken down, and that's something we can share with you as well. But there is money that is coming now from that last stimulus package, and we know that there's a possible fourth stimulus package on its way. What that will entail and to continue to possibly push us to all mail, we'll see. There is a bill out there right now for that in Congress. Have you, Adrian, heard anything about that grant money coming in and what it would come into Arizona for? Since we already do have a significant amount of mail, we don't need to kind of boost that as much as maybe other states. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I mean, the way that the feds distribute that money is a little archaic. They usually push it through to the secretaries. utilizing some kind of formula based on number of voters, you know, and then the secretaries of state will distribute it among the counties. Sometimes there's matching requirements for some of the monies. It really depends. And frankly, we have just come off of our presidential preference election, and we've been sort of offboarding our staff to work at home. And so getting into the nitty gritty of this, mostly because we're looking at potentially a couple of weeks from now at the absolute earliest to be able to engage with this, it hasn't been the highest priority to look at the details yet, to be quite honest with you. But we do have a policy analyst on board who's already looking at that and trying to figure out how we're going to be able to A, capture the money, B, what exactly can we use it for? Because sometimes it's directed, as you indicated, to administer certain programs or for security purposes or personnel or equipment. So we've got to look carefully at those things, figure out what we need, and then what we're going to go out and try to grab. You know, there was a HAVA bill, a HAVA 2, I want to say in 2018. There was some more money in 2019. Look, Congress understands that our election systems have been starved for resources for a long time. Let's not forget, one of the reasons I got elected was because of this mantra of doing elections as cheap as humanly possible. I mean, that was the directive from the board of supervisors to the recorder at the time. And look what happened. So folks recognize that this is an incredibly important function of government, and they're starting to put resources into it. $400 million is nowhere near the $2 billion that we need. Right. And I don't disagree that it's probably $4 billion, because I've seen some of the systems across the rest of the country. And like I said earlier, man, we've got it pretty good here. That having been said, we could always use better resources, particularly in the areas of bolstering up some of our facility security, personnel security, which is kind of expensive, you know, force protection for our people. Things of that nature. So we could definitely use it. But all in all, I think Maricopa County is in really good shape. So it's not the absolute highest for us. Now, other counties in the state, man, they're hurting hard, and they really need that help. So as far as the rest of the counties are concerned, I absolutely think that this is a great first step, but we definitely need more.
And at the federal level as well, obviously considering, and there's, I think you can see I don't know if you can all see the stimulus package, but that's a little bit of what was in that, or what should that 400 million cover. You know, what I think people need to start looking at too is what our Postal Service is going through at the moment, and what we would need to do to beef up and support the Postal Service. There's a lot of gaps in the benefits that they can provide for their workers, who some have contracted the virus, and it is an issue. So that's something that I'm hoping to see as we continue to look at what's coming out of DC with these stimulus packages, which to me are a misnomer. But let's move on. We have about 10 minutes left, and we have a lot of questions. So we're going to do what we call rapid fire. Adrian, are you ready?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to invite some people on because I think it's more engaging, but we'll go quickly. So we have Nelson, and I think he's asking on behalf of his wife, Anita, another Anita. We love Anitas. Nelson, if you can ask your questions.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah, okay, Anita, go ahead.
So I actually wanted to know if you've been getting any pressure to start throwing people off the voter rolls. I was worried about that, because if that's one of the tax they're taking in other states, I'm wondering if it's hit yours.
Yeah, the simple answer is no. And I think the folks out there that would consider something like that know better. I would never take anything like that laying down, and I would cause a stink beyond all stink. So that's not going to happen as long as I'm the county recorder here in Maricopa County.
Okay.
Is that rapid fire?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that question.
All right, we have another question. I think the answer is yes to this, but do you need more volunteers to process mail-in ballots?
We don't have any volunteers. We only pay folks to do temporary work because you have to take an oath and there's requirements. And the answer is yes, 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 yes. Getinvolved.maricopa.vote. Again, getinvolved.maricopa.vote. I'll put that in here as well on the chat for you. So go ahead and queue up the next one.
All right, so is our voting system here in Arizona secure from hacking? And I'm going to add on to that in general, you know, some of the arguments against mail that I'm seeing on the internet, as we call it, is really that, oh, mail, people can fraud, so much fraud with mail. How do you answer that?
Yeah, mail-in balloting is far more secure and far more accountable than in-person polling place voting. Nobody who is serious about these issues or has studied these issues would contradict what I've just said. Insofar as hacking is concerned, the greatest hack we have to worry about is the fact that, you know, some Republicans think that Democrats eat babies for breakfast and some Democrats think Republicans eat them for dessert after a heavy lunch. The fact that we hate each other now, the fact that we've become so polarized and unwilling to listen to one another, that's the real hack against the American public and therefore against our election systems. There have been IT and data probing. There have been attempts. We get hit with all kinds of attempts all the time. Everybody does. Everybody in government across the board does. But at the end of the day, the reality is hacking an election is really, really hard. And let me just open this up just a tiny bit. In 2017, I took a team of 7 to DEF CON, which is the hacker convention in Las Vegas. 7 people from my office. We were there. We paid, I drew out cash for the registration fees because we wouldn't even take our own personal cell phones. We were using flip phones and T9 texting to communicate back and forth. We wouldn't take our phones. We are on top of what the hackers are doing. We're on top of what the election security people are doing. We have our own security officer. I'm the only election administrator in the country that has his own security officer that I'm aware of. I don't think anybody else has their own. They usually share it with other departments. Maricopa County, the recorder's office, for my voter registration database and the rest of our information systems, we have our own security officer. We're taking this very seriously. And so are we worried? Yes, or we wouldn't be spending these resources. Are we vigilant? Absolutely. And are we a little bit paranoid? Sure. Why not? I mean, look, I was a classified materials controller when I was in the Marine Corps. I take this security side of these things very, very, very seriously. But it's not just an internet hack type of thing. We're talking about personnel security. We're talking about force protection on the ground. We're talking about actual ballot security. There are levels and levels and levels of this that we're looking at all the time. And I'm really happy about the progress that we've made.
So we have a question. So we had asked Steve's question before, and he clarified a little bit of what he was really asking, which is that how can you assure him that his vote was tabulated and recorded exactly as he cast it? So not necessarily getting the notifications, which is what I had understood his question as before, but how do you let people know that, yes, as you cast it?
Yeah, so what I would encourage you to do is to go to Maricopa. You know what? I'm going to put that link in the chat here too, because I think this is really useful and I'm excited about it. If you go to maricopa.vote, maricopa.vote. If you go to that website and you click on the publications tab, you'll see the early voting plan. In the early voting plan, and I'm going to put a link right here in the chat. The early voting plan has a narrative inside of it that speaks to all of the processes that happen through the early voting system. It talks about database, talks about how we send the ballots out, how we get them back, what we do with them, how we scan them, and all that sort of stuff. So this is a really good resource. Let's see if I can drag it in there. No, it won't let me drag it in there. All right, anyway, if you go to maricopa.vote and you go to the publications page, go down to the early voting plan, and then once you get in there, you'll see that there is a early vote processing section that speaks to how those processes actually work. It's a nice little narrative. It's about a page and a half or so, maybe a little bit more, but it's really, really good primer on that. So once you go through that, then there you go. Publications, early voting plan, right under March 17, that first one right there. And then you'll go down to page 6-ish. Okay, so in-person early voting, here you want early voting process, ballots assembled, mailed out to eligible voters, etc. And then if you go down to the middle of that page, I'm sorry, it's the next page. Yeah, no, that's it. As early ballots are returned by mail, just down a little bit, sorry. Oh, this is a little clunky. Here we go. Here we go. Staff picks up the mail, delivers it, hand document batches to Runback, and then it talks about where the ballots go from there, how they're processed through the system, and we actually keep tabs on all of that. So if you go, as your ballot gets scanned, your voter file picks up the ping that we ordered you a ballot for this election. Ping, we ping you on, your ballot got sent to you. We ping you on, your envelope got back to us. We ping you on, your ballot envelope was signature verified. And then we ping you on, it was sent to tabulation. Once it's sent from signature verification to tabulation, there is no way for us to discern what your ballot says. And that's because we want to anonymize the ballot to keep your selections private. Now, we take those big batches and we audit them, and we have all of the audit trail going all the way back to the space where we actually separate the ballot and the envelope. But again, when we separate out those batches of 200 to 250 ballots, when we separate them from the envelope, they go over to the BTC, the Ballot Tabulation Center. We can't tell who voted for whom. It's just not possible. And we don't want to, because that preserves the anonymity of your ballot for you.
Okay, Steve, I hope that helps. If you still have follow-up questions, you can always email us. We'll get them to Adrian. We have a question, and this one I'll take because, I mean, Adrian's a candidate as well. He is up for re-election. We'll let him give a little plug at the end in a minute. But Cynthia had a question. I think this is off of maybe from Facebook. Any talk about extending signature deadlines? And no, that's in the federal statute, so they cannot extend it. And it is April 6th, which is what? Monday, right? So we're very close on that. Adrian, you filed, haven't you?
I have my appointment is on Monday.
Okay, so he's doing it. He's that last minute kind of guy. We're filed. I was not taking any chances with everything that's going on, but yeah, they are not extending that deadline. They have made it so you can drop those off and without any contact. There's a drop box, or you can mail them certified mail. And we're seeing that it's working for people so far. I haven't heard of any issues. They've done a great job to make sure that our candidates can still get everything in on time, and we'll see how it goes on Monday.
Yeah, I have to shout out to our candidate services people at the election department, especially Christy Passarelli and Hope Olguin. Those folks have been there, and they're behind the glass. They get the paper, they count it right in front of the candidates if you come in person. They give you a receipt for how many signatures that you turned in. They're not validating at that point, and then they take the pile in. So it's a great system that they put together at the last second, because I ordered the warehouse to be all but cleared except for that service. They adapted, bam, we're doing a great job for candidates out there.
Yeah, and thank you for that. There's a question, and unfortunately, Ron, we cannot sign Adrian's online. County can't be signed online. So, but you have everything you need, or does anyone can help you still? There's a question of how they can sign your petition.
Well, you'd have to track me down, but good luck finding me, because I'm in isolation like everybody else. No,
but you're good, right?
We're well over I think we've got about, our number's 3,800 and something, and I think we're going to be turning in close to 8,000 signatures. So I think we're in good shape.
You're in good shape. Okay. So then we have, we know we are like a minute over, but I think we can answer another question or two. If you have any last minute questions, you want to get them in now. Beth, if you're still there, I'm going to let you answer yours. And we can both kind of take this one, or I'm going to let you ask yours, excuse me. And there you go, Beth, if you can.
I see Beth is muted still.
I know. Why are you muted, Beth? I unmuted you. Let's see. Sometimes on your own end, you have to.
Hi there.
All right,
Beth,
what do you got?
So I was wondering, do you think the federal government is going to try and either move the general election in November or do anything because it can tie in with the virus?
I don't think so. You know what? I know that we're in really crazy times and stuff, but I have to believe in the better angels of everyone in this country. I have to believe that Americans are Americans first. I have to believe that. And I think we all owe ourselves sort of a step back from the hyperbole, from the combativeness, from the raw, unbridled politics of the moment. It's not all a conspiracy, right? It's not all bad. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, but I really do believe in our system, and I do believe in the American people. And so while I know I've heard of people talking about that, I don't know that anybody is really very serious about that.
Yeah, I think it would be quite a stretch for that to happen at this point. I am positive, like Adrian, with this kind of the soul of this country and our ability to protect our democracy and the movement that we've seen to do that over the last couple of years. But there is that paranoia that, this administration has tried things and could that happen? But again, we're not seeing any indication of it at this point that would happen. I think that right now the concern we did see the Democratic convention move today. And I think that everyone's just doing what they need to do to protect people, and that makes sense. So, looking at the data, hopefully we get through this before November in a way that we can still run these elections. But again, kind of closing this out, the idea is let's push, and I think all of you on this call, most of you agree with, we had a poll, we didn't run it, that we should go to all mail for this time, and we should push for that now. So our administrators, everybody that works so hard with Adrian's team and across the state and across the country have the time to actually make this happen. We are in good shape in Arizona, but not everybody is. And so we need to kind of push that. And again, write your state legislators, write to the governor, call their offices, keep pushing this issue. Let me see. Thank you, Beth. If we have anything else that we didn't really get to, let's see. Anybody have any last questions? We're going to do that one last minute question thing. Okay, everyone looks like they've got their questions answered. Everyone's very happy, and we're very, very grateful to you, Adrian. If you have follow-up questions, like I said before, please feel free to send them to us through the email, Anita at Anita for Arizona. Adrian, do you want to give out your email or information?
My email for this purpose would be adrian@electfontes.com. That's elect, FONTES.com. And if I could, before we shut it down, Anita, you can go to electfontes.com, and just like everybody else, and it's just the worst time in the world to be making fundraising asks, but my campaign's probably watching, and if I didn't say pitch in $1 or $2, they'd kill me. So I'm immune from that now because I've made the ask. I know Anita and every other campaign out there probably could use the support. And I would also encourage you, if you would consider it, to look at helping out the Maricopa County Democratic Party. They are not funded by the DNC or ADP. It's completely independent of both of those organizations. And Steve Slugaki and Maritza and Eder and Brooklyn and all those folks do a good job. So, oh, look, how nice is that?
Yeah. Andy doesn't do that for me.
No,
but it's okay.
Here's the funny thing about this. That jacket is humongous on me, and they had to button it up in the back because I had lost so much weight that I still hadn't bought new jackets yet. So that's why it looks funny on me. I'm just insecure.
It doesn't look funny. Now we're all looking at that. So now that you pointed it out.
Anyway, listen. So yeah, this is a really important position. I came into it because I was mad that people couldn't vote. Didn't matter which party they were in. You know, I'm a Marine Corps veteran and an American first and a Democrat second. Sometimes I feel like it's a long second, but that's, you know, it is what it is. And I really, really do believe in this country, and I believe in the values and the precepts of our Constitution. And all of the advances we've made, particularly helping traditionally underserved communities, communicating with voters, that's all on the chopping block. And we know that the other side is not happy that we've got outreach as strong as we do. And that's okay. The other thing too, and I want to thank you, Anita, for doing this and for having me on. Unfortunately, I'm in a position where I cannot endorse any candidates. So I hope folks understand this is respectfully not an endorsement of your candidacy for CD6, I believe. And I wish you and everyone involved there the best. And thank you so much to everybody who gave us questions, and for all of you who are out there as PCs or activists or folks getting other people engaged in voting. This democracy needs you really badly. So don't let some silly little killer virus get in your way. Get yourselves working in any creative way that you can to help protect this democracy. So thank you, Anita.
Thank you. And yes, most campaigns have switched to digital. There's volunteer activities, so I'm sure Adrian needs volunteers. We will continue our volunteer activities remotely. We have a distributed network, so we're continuing on. This is very important that we continue to get people. And you guys are all so engaged here on the Zoom. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the work you're doing. Bye to our Facebook friends, and we'll do another edition in a couple of days. So thank you again, Adrian, and see y'all later. Bye.
See you. Bye.